And then I would like to welcome everybody to this webinar, another webinar on the CRA Standards Unlocked series, a follow-up of the Navigating Smart Cards and Similar Devices and Secure Element Compliance under the CRA. My name is Els and I am moderating the webinar in the background. As usual, all the participants are muted during the presentation, so you cannot raise your question out loud, but you can raise your hand and you can use the Q&A panel to submit your questions should you have any questions. The speakers can have a look at the questions during the presentation or afterwards. Should your question remain unreplied, we can make a Q&A report available for you. Should you be on one of the social media channels that are listed here below, you are free to talk about the topic with the training for standard hashtag or the dedicated hashtag for standards for CRA. So as mentioned, my colleague Lucia Landry will hopefully be connected soon, but we also have the pleasure to have with us Ivan Plash, who is a rapporteur of the CNTC 224 Working Group 17, working on that specific work item for the CRA standards request. So please, Ivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Els. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining and having time for this webinar. I will start with sharing of the presentation that we have prepared collectively in a group that is working on that standard. So I hope that this is visible.
All good.
Okay, thank you very much, Els. So today in the presentation, we will have less chapters than the last time, where we have had a session somewhere mid of July, but we will dive deeper in a couple of topics. Introduction will be wider coverage of the topics that were already presented. And we will also look deeper in the proposition how to work on risk assessment. Then we will go through one use case for the governmental ID, and we will see which aspects are in particularly important and which are demanding some specific approaches to the Cyber Resilience Act compliance. In the last part of the session, we will have also exposure of the current view on the compliance evaluation principles. And after that, usually Q&A for as long as the time will allow us that. I would also like to underline that there will be multiple possibilities from now on to ask the questions about this particular standard. We will have today Q&A, then we will try to upload the presentation on the repository that we are preparing together with Etsy. Then there will be also possibility to send a question after these sessions or during this session. We will try to collect them from the chat here. And last but not least, there will be a public inquiry starting in some weeks from now, in which everybody is welcome to share the view and give constructive propositions. Now, what I would also like to say is that probably it will not be possible for the group of people that is working on this standard to answer all of the questions. So we may group some of them or answer in some of these 4 opportunities that we will have. That being said, I would like to start with the introduction. So the standard that we are talking about here has a popular name, vertical category 41B. It is a standard that is addressing an application on the secure element. We will, of course, today go deeper into architectural part of what this precisely is. This standard, as all of the Cyber Resilience Act vertical and horizontal standards, are coming from the mandate of the European Commission M606 that were accepted by CENELEC and ETSI, 2 of the European Union's organizations for standardization. The other part, the 41A, is covering secure IC and platform, we will cover also this in more detail. However, I want to underline that this 41A is a separate standard that is also written by colleagues in another work group under another technical committee. Who is on our committee? So since summer, we have 1+ expert joining the group. This is Soline Renat. She is working for PayCert, and there are very good propositions, especially for the payment content and context coming from her. Other than that, the names are exposed and the names are same as they were also in June and July. What I also have to do is I have to excuse my colleague Thomas Eichinger, who was preparing the presentation for governmental part, but unfortunately he caught a flu over the weekend and he is not able to join. So I will try to the best of my abilities to cover the part for e-government as well. If there will be more questions on that part, then we will collect them and try to come back with higher priority. So an important overview of progress of the standard. What you see here is usual sequential plan that is a project plan based on the template that Senelec has. We have finished the drafting session by the end of the August, and we have submitted the draft for the review to see what are the first comments by reviewers, which are coming from ENISA and DG Connect, so European Commission. We have received the comments and we are working them in. And after this editing phase, there will be a translation phase. Actually, the first draft will not be translated to English, up to my knowledge. Will be not translated into other languages. Only English version will be available. But in these 8 weeks, we will conduct one more assessment and one more review session with experts from ENISA and from European Commission. And after that, the public inquiry number 1 would commence. The second part of the project is also having one flexible phase in which we need to handle the public comments and see how to address them in the next version of the standard. And after editing and then translation, the standard would come to a formal vote. Now, this is, of course, looking like a long timeline, especially for the flexible part. But one of the good reasons why we are having this webinar is the fact that we are aware that manufacturers of application would need to learn as early as possible in which direction this is going and to learn at least the current state of the details that are available, even if we are in a situation where we cannot confirm many of them. Some of them are stamped as a preliminary. We are very careful, of course, about that. Simply, we cannot write a standard in a prescriptive way. We need to also go through the public inquiry. And what we are doing here with this webinar, we are also trying to pull it a little bit in and to enable even more lively communication. We are well aware that this is creating more effort on our side as well. Good. So last time we also talked about the standard, the type of the standard, and what does it mean to have a harmonized standard for a particular category. The most important statement that we have to underline here is that the usage of the harmonized standards in the process of obtaining the Cyber Resilience Act compliance is voluntary. What does that mean? Some would probably think if the standard is optional, then the entire Cyber Resilience Act compliance is optional, which is, of course, not true. There are precisely 3 ways how one application on the secure element can achieve this compliance. First one is logically assessment according to this standard. This is what we are working on, and we believe that this would cause the lowest effort and lowest costs on the manufacturer side. And also it would be easier for all of them who would be evaluating this submission for compliance, which actually should result in the shortest time to compliance. The second option is possible via the EUCC evaluation and certification. Now, there would be effort to close the gap between the target of evaluation and scope of the standard. We will talk about this more over the next slides. And the third one is if none of these options is viable or preferred by application manufacturers, then manufacturer can, of course, start own process. There is, of course, a provision in one of the annexes to the Cyber Resilience Act that is enabling that. We would believe that this could result in the highest effort because then a lot of work is coming not only on the manufacturer, even more so on the evaluator, which might not be embedded in the manufacturer's business flow. So this is something what we are, of course, not covering here because we cannot predict how each specific manufacturer or each specific group of manufacturers, for example, around some standardization, industry standardization context could actually work on that. So we will focus mostly on the first one and we will cover second with most important information about it. So how could this work? How to reach the compliance via EUCC? There is a provision in the Article 27 in the Cyber Resilience Act, which is saying that with particular evaluation schemes, the presumption of conformity could be achieved. And EUCC is currently the only scheme that is evaluated for suitability according to the Cyber Resilience Act standard. However, we need to understand that there might be a gap. A little bit about that potential gap. So it doesn't have to be the case for all of the products that would go to through the evaluation and certification according to the EUCC. But usually, and also what we know from common criteria, is that target of evaluation can be precisely tailored to one functionality, one specific use case, and it does not even have to cover the full life cycle. And this coverage of the full life cycle within the usual common criteria or even EUCC evaluations and certifications is naturally tailored to where the manufacturer stands in the value chain or in the life cycle management of the entire product. However, Cyber Resilience Act, on the other side, is addressing the full product over the entire life cycle. So there must be a set of the requirements and possibly even updates of protection profiles or extensions of the security targets that are addressing this gap. In order to address it, there will be clear possibilities and provisions within the harmonized standard. So we also want to help this process as well. What is also important for the application on the secure element, in any of these three cases, these two vulnerability assessment levels are valid. So I need to be very clear, and we will repeat this probably 3 times, is that Cyber Resilience Act itself does not demand security certification. But to a degree, the product shall pass evaluation. which is in many aspects not going as deep as typical common criteria evaluations. So the efforts there will not be comparable, but core principles of these two vulnerability levels are valid. And also it is important to say, because we have the product that is in a critical category according to the Cyber Resilience Act. So application on the secure element, meaning also secure element itself, is one of 3 critical components, and it needs to be evaluated by third party. Now, we also need to be clear there is one exception allowing for AVAVAN.3. We will explain this later. Allow me also to present what to evaluate. And now we are starting already with some more information than what was shared previously in the session in July. Let us first evaluate what a secure element is. We will have a wider analysis of the architectures, but I hope that for the explanation, the rudimentary presentation of the architecture of the secure element here is sufficient. There are 3 parts that are building a secure element. There is a secure IC, then there is some kind of execution environment, which is related to application or multiple applications. So at least one application must be embedded into this architecture in order to have a secure element. What is noticeable is that this is more the contextual concept that we are talking about here, whereas we do have a notion of the hardware, secure IC here. And the representation of the secure elements here, still here is remaining conceptual, as this is the only appropriate way how we can continue and talk about other parts where it is implemented. And where is it implemented? The secure element is implemented typically on the smart cards and similar devices. With regards to the smart cards, smart card in our context and in the scope of this standard consists of a secure element and also of a body which has typically ID1, TD1 form factor. The body may be done out of plastic, one layer, multiple layers, wood, or any type of the material. It's important to understand that there is a ISO 7810 specification and a standard that is defining what a smart card body would also be. Similar devices, we could simply say anything else that is not a smart card that has a secure element in it is a similar device. Regardless of how many interfaces this device has, regardless of how complex electronics around the secure element is, it's a similar device. Of course, it's a little bit difficult to put a smartphone or a more complex IoT device in a comparison with a smart card, even though when people are paying with mobile phones, usually the rest are you paying with a card. So let's say this is only one trivial similarity that we can underline. But functionally, it is comparable by many means. So the point is not to be constrained with the form factor. The point is simply to take a look where applications on the secure elements are working, where is secure element embedded, and how is then Cyber Resilience Act compliance comprising whole product about and around that. The one more thing where you could find, so one more way where a secure element could be embedded into something is when other products that are maybe not addressed here are also embedding the secure element and using the secure element for the functionality. Some of these will specifically be addressed by another standards, by many other standards that are evolving over the past weeks and months in the CENELEC and ETSI work groups. We will then talk about the composition, and we will also have provisioning within the standard that will regulate composition of such products as well. Going one layer deeper within the standards, and especially in the context of the Cyber Resilience Act, we love to talk about the intended purpose of the product with digital elements and foreseeable use of the product with digital elements. Intended purpose is underlying certain capabilities of the product with digital elements. And foreseeable use is related to use cases that have particular functionalities. I understand that this is a little bit abstract, maybe for some. We will also have a concrete example about this later. For now, let us look first into capabilities of the secure element, which are very clear. There are three of them. First, secure element needs to have possibility and capability to communicate securely and transfer the sensitive information from one point to another point to receive it or to send it out. The second is that secure element needs to securely process this information. And this processing may include cryptographic operations, but not necessarily. There are many secure elements that are, of course, processing full application that is related to one use case, and not all of them are security relevant, which we will also address later. As many would know, the advice and the almost a request from the evolving from the Cyber Resilience Act is to have functional part updatable separately from security part. The third one is also related to the secure storage of the information that is retrieved or processed. So it's not only that data that is in a processing or data in transfer needs to be protected, even more so secure elements are popular to protect the data addressed. Now, some of the, but not all use cases, I hope that it is okay. We need to be a little bit careful because it is absolutely impossible to predict all of the use cases that one secure element could find on our planet. But some of them that are popular and typical are really secure identification. So many of the activities in the governmental space, but also user authentication and identification, like with the EUCC. Then access control, we have their physical, logical, and network access control, payment, digital signatures, IoT, automated fare collection, whatnot. So there are many, many applications where we see them and many people are using them daily. Now, a little bit closer to example. So just to build a relation between the intended purpose and one application, because going deeper into that, I think that it is not necessary and it would just take time. The principle would be the same. On the left side, we are having the intended purpose completely aggregated in secure communication, crypto computation, and secure storage. And then on the right side, we have what could represent a logical access control use case. We could, of course, put any type of the use case here. And then in any part of the functionality of the logical access control card, we would need to use one or multiple capabilities depending on what function is requiring. So that's, I think, obvious. And already here with these 4 functions, there are many relations to these capabilities that we have here. And of course, the card or the system where the secure element is in might not need any of this at some point in time. That's also okay. Right, so this was the first part. Let us now look a little bit deeper into how the system with secure elements could look like and where could we find secure elements. On this graphic, we wanted to present, let's say, one possible system, definitely not the only possible system, where we have network of endpoints. Some of them might have secure elements, some of them might not have secure element, might have also less relevance for security in particular system or installation. Then on the right hand, we have services and gateways. Gateways can definitely have secure elements, even though they might be optional, especially if there is a HSM behind them. HSM can be in the cloud, on-prem, can also have different architectures, and HSMs are also to be standardized in another vertical category. On the left hand, we have something what people usually have in the hand: smartphones, cards, tokens, fobs, SIM cards, whatnot. And the more complexity the device has, like a smartphone, the more embedded functionality of the secure element can be addressed. On the smartphones, we know that this is possible and typically used with wallets. There are also some restrictions to have secure elements via the wallets working only from NFC. That's everything not part of the standardization that we are driving forward. The standard will remain agnostic to this type of the functionalities. The standard is addressing only the security parts of the systems. Also, why are we painting the system? Throughout the presentation today, you will hear a couple of times about remote processing and remote processing capabilities. It needs to be said that the standard is not related only to how secure element or application of the secure element operates. The standard is equally relating to the remote processing capabilities. And remote processing capabilities, just to demystify that to a degree possible at this moment in the presentation, the remote processing capabilities are related to any processing that is happening outside of the secure element, but it is requiring communication with the secure element. So in that way, remote processing can happen. Just taking a look at the picture here. It can happen, for example, in the MPU on the smartphone. It can also happen at any on the endpoints directly communicating via one of these typical interfaces, Bluetooth, NFC, ultra-wideband, because this is also communication with the secure element. Remote processing can also happen then on a gateway. It can also happen in the HSM or in the service behind it, whether it is on the premise or in the cloud, it matters not. The only important is that there is a relation with information that is processed on the secure element. What also doesn't matter is in how many protocols or how many layers the communication packages with the secure element are packed or wrapped in. Okay, so let's look into architectures. Very high level, I think that this is almost a trivial picture. The very high level representation of the architecture is that there is some kind of application and some kind of a platform. And application can be at least something like a Java card or maybe even less complex executable bare metal code being written directly even on the secure IC. So we already there have a notion of application and platform, but application can be also the full native implementation. Let us examine this little bit with a little bit more detail. So here is one representation, definitely a bare metal application on the secure IC. It's also a most rudimentary secure element that we could imagine. What counts is whether it is used as a critical component in many cases, in the use cases, and whether manufacturers is also declaring it as a secure element. Then the other possibility is, of course, to have a layer called operating system between application and secure IC. And I think everybody can imagine what is happening next. Then we can have multi-application context where applications themselves are shielded by firewalls. The operating system is, of course, gaining in complexity. Secure IC might also need to have bigger processing power. And no, this is not the end. There is at least one more context that should be addressed. It is not so that a hybrid implementations are not possible. Some of the very popular constructs out there in the world are following this type of the architecture. So we have multiple applications that are depending on one OS, but then there can be also a firewall between that OS and some other application, or maybe even other OS, and they can share secure IC. There are also sometimes OS voided sandboxes that are working with applications. So any type of the architecture from most rudimentary one to the most complex hybrid architecture is addressed by the Cyber Resilience Act standard. As here, we are not looking into how complex the platform is or how many applications we have. In this standard, the popular 41B, we are talking about one application. So it matters not which of these four architectures we would address. What matters for this standard is that the application has certain qualities and certain requirements fitting to the Cyber Resilience Act critical category. I would also underline, same as I did in our July session, what is out of scope of this standard, because this is also important. Otherwise, we would have a certain confusion. The Cyber Resilience Act looks in these four categories. There is a default category, and by now we have learned that probably more than 90% of the products will fall in a default category. Not secure element based products, but generally from all of the products that we can declare as a products with digital elements in the markets addressed by the Cyber Resilience Act. About 90%, roughly we estimate, will be in a default category. Then there are important products, class 1 and class 2, and there are products that are critical. Now, there are many cards out there in the world, and there are cards that are not using secure elements on it. So there are cards that are not based, at least on the platforms that are having secure IC and some execution environment like global platform on it. We need to be a little bit more formal about what is in, what is not in. If we take a look into the classical ISO nomenclature about cards, then we have integrated circuit cards, and we are distinguishing by the standard between two types. There is one type strictly reserved for the smart cards. Secure elements are on it, and by now we have learned what the architecture of secure element is, and we have also learned that there is a critical category addressing that. But then one may ask, and the question is justified, what do we do with the cards that are not having such a complex chip and application on it? Some of the examples could be related to, for example, fare collection cards. And there is a large number of the fare collection cards that we know in the market. Well, they are not in the scope of this particular standard. They we consider them to be application-specific cards, and they can be based on any other chip, microprocessor, or microcontroller. So if there is a classification under Cyber Resilience Act needed for these cards, then they will be addressed in another classes and in another vertical standards. I think that it is important that we underline that. So we are not covering all of the cards. We are just covering those who really have secure element in it. And of course, not only cards, but also any applications with the secure elements. Where is a secure element, then this category, the critical category, applies. One more thing that is not covered by this standard, which does not mean that it will not be covered by any of the evolving standards or potentially by future standards. I need to underline at this point that there might be more Cyber Resilience Act harmonized standards after we release the set of the standards. I think 41 categories. There will not be 41 standards, will be a little bit less. But for the vertical standards, I think 25, 26 standards, at least you can expect them. But in that realm, we can even expect more. For example, standards addressing trusted execution environment, while trusted execution environment might even do the equal work in some use cases as an embedded secure element. We are not covering it in this standard. Also, what is out of the standard is the integrated secure element concept, which is silicon directly embedded into microprocessor or microcontroller unit. That is, it's just having a secure element within the chip, but it's not embedded outside. Simply because here there is a lot of proprietary technology, and there is not so much proprietary technology in the sense how this is connected, how the entire system works. We cannot currently look with sufficient quality into attack potentials and attack surfaces. So for now, this is also out. Good. I would also like to expose our view on the topic that is probably not so simple. It's about the Cyber Resilience Act and product lifecycle. Please, this is not only about smart cards or secure elements or applications on it. We looked into that and we recognized that there are a couple of standards talking about software product lifecycle. We see also some very specific and well-established industry standards, especially global platform talking about system lifecycle, application lifecycle. But at this moment, we believe that it is not possible to standardize the product lifecycle in a very precise way for applications on a secure element. But what we can address informatively, not in a standardized way, is what operations and what activities during the life cycle can be expected from the manufacturer of the product with digital elements. One of the products with digital elements is application on a secure element. So the first is definitely to assess the risks related to the use case and the product with digital elements, and also the entire environment around it very early in a design phase. Then the applicable essential security requirements needs to be selected. And here they are selected by the standard. We need to be clear about that as well. Then, of course, implementation of these essential security requirements needs to be conducted. Very important thing is in this phase, it is advisable to set up already the vulnerability handling process. Then in the deployment phase, SBOM, all of the manuals, all the documentation that is required by the Act itself needs to be created. And then we have actually a moment where the Cyber Resilience Act assessment can be conducted. And after obtaining the CE mark, provided that the assessment was successful, the product can be placed on the EU market. Please, this is addressing the developments that we would see in the future. There is probably an open question what to do with the products that are already in the market. I think that the Act itself is clear about that. There are articles in it and parts of the regulation itself that are clear about that. What's also important is that after the product is placed on the market, the constant monitor, report, handle, so the loops must be constant. Many of the manufacturers are probably going to see some of the effort here coming on them. But there is no way around it. With some of the products with digital elements, not necessarily only the secure elements and applications on the secure elements, established practices during the DevOps or CI/CD are very helpful. With some of the others, we will see on the next slides that it's a little bit more difficult to think in these terms about it because of the specifics of the products and the form factor. And this needs to be practiced. So this monitor, report, handle continuously needs to be also practiced beyond the end of life. The Act itself has provisioning about that. And then when the next design is happening, we start again with a risk assessment. Now to the specifics of why is it so difficult to establish some of the practices that we talk about, like DevSecOps or CI/CD? Well, simply some of the products like smart cards are first and foremost not updatable. So sometimes we have a reason to completely close and seal them before they are sent into the field. And second, it is also not practical or not to be expected from the end user to update the cards, because this might even increase the security attack surface, because then how would this be done practically? Yes, it could work over the mobile phone, but then mobile phone updating the card would need some specific software. The end user would need to be educated. Then there would be possibilities as soon as the communication with the smart card is open. Probably there would be people interested to see how to exploit that new possibility and so on and so on. In many cases, it's a usual practice to simply replace the card. On the other side, if we take a look at the smartphone use case, well, there could be in the core, not identical, but rather similar, and I would dare to say even almost identical secure element in the smartphone as the one on the smart card. And here we have temporary or continuous connectivity to many services. And there is also internal security mechanism related to how the smartphone itself works. Here it is reasonable expectation that any of the potential vulnerability or any security update is handled automatically. So what do we see on this picture is that we may have operationally and functionally almost identical secure elements with almost identical applications on them. When they need to have a security update due to the specific environment in which smart card operates, end of life of the smart card and replacement of the smart card is probably the best way how to handle the security issues. On the other side, on the smartphones, this can be completely automated, maybe even seamless if the end user agrees with that. Okay, so now we have more information about the structure of this standard. That's already informative now. preliminary structure, what you can expect is it will be 8 chapters and, well, 6 chapters, and then 7th one will come with 1 or more annexes. And we will look into the product context, and many of the information that have been already received by now in this webinar will be embedded into the standards, or better to say they already are. But much of the attention will be spent on requirements and conformity assessment. In annexes, we will want to bring more informative information, or maybe even some alternatives to how to do it for specific use cases. We are, of course, facing a situation where many of the industry standards have been evaluating cards for security and secure elements and applications on the secure elements for more than 20 years by now. And it would be not meaningful not to reuse this knowledge and also these practices. So wherever there is an equivalent response available from established practices, this could be respected by the standard itself. With the word could, I'm at the moment still a little bit careful, because it could happen that, for example, documentation where assessment criteria is available, it's not public, or it is available only to standard industry members, or evaluator cannot comb them, and evaluator might not be educated on them. So this is a difficulty that we still do not know how to handle practically, but we will try to find a way. The second important is information about what is the norm and what is the reference only. The normative reference are exclusively the international standards. There could be some national standards, technical reports, or technical specifications declared as a normative. But this is somehow more difficult, because this is also requiring the evaluation by the Commission itself, by security agencies, and by Senelec, so that we know that one particular technical report, for example, or technical specification is first and foremost contributing to the value of the standard, and that there is availability for everybody who would be using the standard. And second, that there are no specifics. So from IP rights to all of the other things that standard could address or be based upon. So these are, I would say, more the review matters that need to be accomplished before that. But long story short, it is based, our standard is definitely based only on the normative standards, precisely. And for now, what you see here is related to the 15408, so the, in a popular language, common criteria, part 2 and part 3. There might be also more parts evolving from it, and there are precisely 3 of the standards that are evolving. We call them horizontal standards. So there are principles for the cyber resilience, vulnerability handling ones. So these 2 are coming from the 2 work groups in Senelec as well. And then there is also the one that I have mentioned. So this last one, 50764, is about the platform, or the underlying part of the secure element. So secure IC and any execution environment are covered in that standard. So we have no technical reports now, and we do not plan to have them. And also some industry-specific standards are not part of the normative part. They are addressed in the bibliography, and we are still borrowing the context from them, but they are not normative for the standard in a, I would say, umbrella way. Also, what's rather important is that when we write in the normative part, the common criteria reference, this does not mean that according to this standard, a manufacturer of the application on a secure element has to perform common criteria evaluation and certification. We are more than thinking about certifications or evaluations. We are interested only in a cyber resilience act assessment. For that, we are literally borrowing the language from common criteria, because in our view, it is the language that is established in evaluations about and around smart cards, secure elements, applications on it. It is well understood by the community. So we are simply embedding it into standard in order to speed up with the things. But just because we are borrowing the language, it doesn't mean that we are endorsing common criteria or demanding common criteria standard for Cyber Resilience Act application. Please always revert to the explanation. Yes, from EUCC to Cyber Resilience Act, the path is open and possible. But for Cyber Resilience Act to EUCC, that's not possible. So it does not work both ways. Other references that we are considering and respecting from the European Crypto Competence Group, there is a agreed crypto methodologies document. You can find it, you can Google it and find it. This is a document that will probably be referenced in all of the vertical standards. I think that it is worthwhile to investigate what is in it. And I think that many would find it as a rather constructive proposition by the crypto expert group. Then, of course, smart cards, all the ISO context, also 14443 is in it, other vertical standards, and there is also documentation from ENISA about how to achieve Cyber Resilience Act compliance via the EUCC. We also have many of the use cases exposed, and we are actually struggling with how many of the references we should read and we should respect. So this is tough work that we have on it. And lately we have also started to look into the global platform aspects. Now, global platform is, I think, one well-established framework for management of the multi-application cards. We know this from the Multos times, but Java cards is, I think, the option that prevailed and that it is well represented in all of the applications. And why is this also important? At the moment, the global platform is working on some aspects of the secure element that is covering also the EUD wallet application. So I think that these days and these weeks, we will also learn more about that. This is a very welcome development there. Okay, so before the first break that we would have, I would also like to go through the proposition of how we would handle the risk assessment. Now, risk assessment, to address and to define the risk assessment principles on a high level that should remain reusable for all of the applications, and also that would help manufacturers of the applications to have practical approach to it. That's a rather difficult task. I think that everybody would agree on that. We know from common criteria, but also from the EUCC, that there are attack potentials. We will go through the example later. But what attack potentials are somehow missing from time to time are also levels of severity. So here we have had many discussions about, for example, access control, which is not the same if somebody is accessing a closet in the gym, a locker there, or if somebody is accessing the nuclear power plant or any critical infrastructure part. The severities are different. One could use the same product, entirely possible, especially if you are talking about application on the mobile phone. But the severities might be completely different. So it is also on the system and on the people that are choosing appropriate security level we think that they could benefit from a tool where they could say, okay, this is now on the level where only some value is exposed, or there is a level where human lives might be and human safety might be exposed. So this is one almost a novelty that we are, well, it's not so new. I think that the principles were also available in a couple of proceedings and other standardizations. But we are trying to also establish that. Please understand this is preliminary. We are also having many inputs within the standardization community, but then at the end of the day, we would benefit from something like this. Now, allow me to give one clear example about this. What would this, so that we are not constantly so abstract. Years ago, there was a standardization context with multiple protocols addressing the access control rights to the data in the electronic or biometric passport. So if this gets compromised, I think that it is appropriate to say that safety of people might be endangered, because who knows who would get or benefit and in which way from such a compromised biometric passport. There is also this S2 level where I think less severity could be debated. Here we would not talk about the problem of the safety of people. For example, in organization, safety of people can be addressed in a different way. But then the same biometric passport, due to the design of one particular algorithm for one particular access control mechanism, so-called basic access control, cannot even achieve more than AVA-BAN.3, simply because the algorithm is designed in the way where entropy of the keys is simply not sufficient for the higher levels. But we also need to understand what is the severity of the context there. This particular basic access control algorithm is not reading out from a standard passport, nothing what is, for example, not printed on the passport. So one could argue, okay, if it's already printed and I read it out electronically, then the data is already somehow exposed. The more important is that this basic access control algorithm, but also the way how the electronic passport chips are designed and how the systems and applications on them are designed, it's important that the integrity of the information remains intact, but also that rewrite of the data that is stored in the memory is not enabled, or at least not possible in any trivial way or without access control and authentication of the rights and so on. Now I'm speaking also a little bit beyond of the electronic passports. So here we have one product that can work with two of the protocols, and one would then have less severity because there is a value of the personal data and personal assets that are related to the basic access control protocol. But for as long as this data cannot be changed and integrity can be preserved, which is also one of the important Cyber Resilience Act essential requirements, I think that it can be argued that this is okay. But on the other side, if something more becomes exposed, then we need to be much more careful about it. Okay, the next thing, talking about attack potential, of course, typically we are looking at who could attack and what. So this is systematized in multiple schemes, evaluation schemes. And by now we have within Europe or around Europe, I think that we could easily identify there are at least around 5 very serious schemes for evaluation and certification that are having sometimes a little bit different contexts, but literally all of them are revolving around these two parameters. So let us look into how would this calculation, so how to calculate something here, because we need to draw the line somehow, and in order to draw the line, we need to also have something quantifiable. So let us go through one explanation here. What we have here is the famous table with the parameters. I think many would know or recognize it also from the common criteria. It is almost identical in the, if not identical, in the ENISA's document. You see the name here, application of attack potentials to smart cards and similar devices. And what we have here is that one would need to make a decision of how exposed is this target of evaluation or this product. We are talking here about the application on secure element. So let's suppose simply that we have got a score that is moderately high, let's say scored of 33, and whoever was having experience with common criteria, I think that the level of where you need to go with the high assurance levels is about 31. But then we would call this really the high threat. Then we would also look into the use case. And let's say if the use case, if the application on the secure element is compromised, let's say that the safety of the employees, if this would be an employee card, would be compromised. Then we are talking here about the S3 level. And then this would result into the RP3 risk profile, which would then be related to the AVAVN.5. Please, this is also under the EUCC context. It's not only common criteria. There is a similarity between them, if not the equality between them in these aspects. And there would be also a demand to fulfill all of the essential security requirements that are prescribed in the standard. Or in the security target, or the manufacturer would need to go the third way, what we have already mentioned, and respond to the essential security requirements from the Annex 1 of the Cyber Resilience Act in the proprietary way. Okay, so this was the first part of the webinar. I would suggest that we make a short break here. I understand I was marching through this. In the second part, we will learn a little bit more about the standard itself. I think that because the webinar will take a little bit longer time, it would be appropriate to take about 10 minutes break. So if this is okay, I would suggest that we restart the session and recommence here in, let's say, 14:20. I think this would be appropriate, a little bit more than 10 minutes. Okay, so thanks to everybody. We already have a couple of questions. Allow me just first to share my screen. We will have time at the end of the session to go to some of the questions. So please be diligent and do ask them, especially here. We would answer some of them then verbally and in a discussion. Then we could also collect some questions that maybe I will not even be able to answer and provide the answers later. Then there will be also a possibility to provide a feedback via the portal that we are building, and there is also upcoming public inquiry session. So please don't be shy to ask the questions. The standard is evolving, okay? And many constructive inputs are welcome and needed. With that being said, let us continue with our session. Just to check, the screen is still visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Els. Good, so we will now go in a little bit more details about what are the use cases. Beside of the governmental use cases that you will look into over the next couple of slides, we are also having close attention to payment use cases, as expected, also EUCC use cases, and we will also try to cover some of the aspects of functionality of the applications on secure elements in the IoT devices and mobile phones. Now, for the governmental part, what we see in the governmental part is that there are typically two types of the devices or things that people are holding in their hands. Traditionally, we are talking about documents like passports, ID cards, but also tachograph card, then ID cards for the government's officials, work permit cards. So all of this we consider to be the governmental official documents. Now, I do understand and know that some of these are maybe not even issued by governmental authorities. There are private universities having cards and so on, but in a nutshell, we have tried to look into the use cases that are kind of available in the European Union and its wider extent. Then the second part of the applications are applications that are working on the mobile devices. And in the mobile devices, many of mobile devices do have secure elements. And then there could be a construct called applet, meaning a Java card applet, where particular application could be executed. What we know here is that due to some restrictions with some of the devices, so I hope that it's appreciated that I'm not going into particular analysis of the particular architectures, but due to some restrictions, it is usually wallets what we are talking about that are directly connected to the applets. And there are also some restrictions in communication. So some communication protocols, most of them are actually happening between the secure element via the NFC and some reading device out there. Now that's everything just to be noted. This is just informative. What's important for us is that we understand that there are solid applications on the secure elements and they can be also developed in different ways, but for the context of this standard, we are talking about, let's say, wallets, mobile ID, ICAO DTC, and digital travel companion, signature applications, whatnot that can be running on the secure element. Please, let's understand this might not be the only way how this can work, but for the case it works like that, then this standard applies. Or EUCC applies, or manufacturer would need to prove the conformance and compliance to CRA in own way. There's one important information that we all need to understand is that, especially in a governmental context, we are talking about certifications on the cards that is happening for 25 years. I'm also happy to recognize some of the people that I worked, let's say 20 years ago, not 25 years ago with, especially on these certifications and development of these systems. But on the end, we also have their high security assurance levels. So this is available there. Now, still how this is evolving and how are these protection profiles covering the compliance to Cyber Resilience Act, it's not given. So there might be, from a case to case, context where protection profiles would need to be updated in order to bridge the gap towards the Cyber Resilience Act. I don't think that this is so horrendously complex, but we need to understand that the aspects that Cyber Resilience Act is covering are different and to a degree wider than what typical protection profile would do. So we are really talking about a full product over the entire life cycle. However, what we also need to understand here, so we are talking about in our task force, in our group where we are developing this standard, we are talking about 14+8. So 14 requirements on the product, you will see them here listed, and they are directly linked to the essential security requirements. We are just, of course, not writing them with a full regulative language here. And there are 8 of them addressing the vulnerability handling. Here, let's just take a look on the electronic passport. The requirements on the product are clear, but also very generic. If we take a look at the electronic passport, one of these requirements is bringing the requests to reset the product with digital elements to original state. I think that this is not really practical for, technically it could be applicable, let's be clear about that, but not really practical or secure for the electronic passports on any governmental document. What would this mean? Can it be repersonalized? By whom? I think that if I start to evaluate it further, it would be almost funny how we could describe that. Then another thing, opting out from the electronic passport program. I mean, many governmental documents are property of the government, and opting out is probably not an option. So we need to be realistic about applicability of the regulation and standard to particular use cases, and we aim to describe these clear situations to the best of our abilities within the standard, so that whoever is then programming and bringing to the European market governmental applications for the secure elements would know that some common sense things are covered. But the same thing, as said, if we talk about secure elements in the mobiles and we have application there, well, suddenly all of this may apply. Similar thing that we have here, but now on the other side. So if we take a look at the vulnerability handling, depending on a governmental document, but also depending on the who is the manufacturer of the application, some of the practices might not be well established. I think if we take an example here of the health cards or social insurance cards or health insurance cards, there are countries in European Union where this is somehow regulated, but then there is a private sector and private insurances, and then there are state enabled insurances. And here the plethora of security practices might not be applicable to all of them, or some security practices are not even established in some of the cases. So we see quite a diverse situation there, and it's, let's say, very wide in the options that are practiced now. This standard is aiming to bring these options towards what is the common sense practice as well. Okay. Handling of gaps, we already have talked about that. So one more time, and apologies for repeating the same picture. We think that this is a rather important picture that we would like you to take with you from this webinar, is simply so that current practices might not be sufficient or not even addressing, because there was no need to address all of the aspects that we are now seeing coming from Cyber Resilience Act. That's a very important thing. And one more time, it's not so that if the Cyber Resilience Act compliance is required, that somebody needs to certify against the EUCC. We just see that it is also practical then for the applications that have to go through the certification, and many in the governmental place will be somehow either mapped or recertifying to the EUCC, then the presumption of conformity for the CRA should be possible, because otherwise then it's even more effort for the manufacturer for the application. Okay, and with that being said, now I need to take some water, because the next part of the session is looks a little bit dry, but probably it is the most interesting part of our deep dive webinar, because we will start to expose some principles in the standards and some concrete requirements. Okay, hopefully for the last time, CRA compliance does not mandate any type of the security evaluation and certification, including EUCC. That's important to understand. The other way around, obtaining the presumption of conformity after accomplished certification. And for now, this is only EUCC. More schemes could be coming, but for now, Commission managed only to look into the EUCC and make it possible to have this other way around enabled. So one could actually accomplish EUCC and obtain the CRA presumption of conformity. CRA to EUCC, no go. EUCC to CRA, possible. We already talked about 14 plus 8. And I think that many of the participants had a chance to look into the Cyber Resilience Act in a detail. And now we will go one by one through these requirements. This might take us some time. I will, however, not go into all of the particularities of common criteria, and I'm not even the biggest expert in a group from them for that. But at least we can take a look into it and record the questions if there will be any, and also we would expect then more review over the next weeks. Let's look first into the product properties. The first product property that needs to be respected, and the first essential security requirement, is to practice security by design. What does this mean? The activities do include security analysis of the application, risk environment context. So it's not only about the application. You see, we already talk about the entire environment around it. So how is the product built? What is the form factor? What is the architecture around it? What are the objective requirements? Which cryptography is used? And so on and so on. The application security requirements must be applicable to this particular application. What we have here is, as a reference, is definitely agreed crypto methodologies by ECCG. And yes, they are European authority. I have noticed one question there to do that. And to my knowledge, there is also an effort between many member state agencies, and there is a lead by the Commission and ECCG to evolve this document even further so that it is practical for this standard and for many others. And what you see here is that there is, so the language that we are borrowing from common criteria is actually coming with a reference to particular practices that are documented and in a common criteria. The applicability of this requirement by the standard is definitely mandatory. And please allow me just to, I think that some questions are already evolving in the background. Allow me just to fly through this presentation, and then maybe best would be to open the Q&A session and then to go to the particular questions related to them. Also, some of these might be connected with other product requirements. So bear in mind that if you have a question now, it might be also answered a little bit later with one another requirement. Then the second thing, no known vulnerabilities. So there is a vulnerability database by ENISA, and it is expected from the manufacturer to have no known vulnerabilities at the moment of the placement in the market. And what you see here is that we are referencing very precisely WAN.4 and WAN.5. This is related also to the risk profile that is chosen by the manufacturer to work with it. So back in the presentation, we talked about the security profiling, risk profiling, and severity levels. The third one will be secure by default when placed on the EU market. Here we are looking also into architecture of the product. We are also looking at particularly FSP2, which is also enforcing functional specification related to security. Design needs to be specified very well. So at the moment of evaluation, there is a effort expected from the manufacturer in documenting all of these aspects. There also should be a factory reset command enabled. Of course, look, we all know that this is not practicable for some of the use cases. We already talked about that. This is why we exposed governmental part on it. But we cannot write a standard for one particular use case. However, we can make exceptions in particular use cases. Also, for some configurations, let's say we have a secure IoT device. Maybe an end user needs to do something to achieve a secure state. So the security by default is not saying everything is happening out of the box. There might be a certain effort expected from the user. Let's say typically, please download the last firmware of the device. Then this one is also mandatory, but let me spoil the context. All of them are mandatory, so 14 plus 8 are mandatory for applications. However, we are very clearly addressing some exceptions. Exception for this one, so for secure by default when placed on the EU market, is by regulation itself, tailor-made products may be excused from that one, but only if the exception is agreed by the end users of the product. Meaning it's in end users' interest to know whether there is some exception, whether this is tailor-made, whether there are some trade-offs and so on. And if end users is specifically agreeing to that, then this is okay. And also operational environments, now we come into the clarity with that, where factory reset is not possible, in particular for smart card applications. So clearly, it's very difficult to think about the factory reset of the electronic passport or many other things. Also, what we have here, this FMT SMF1, there might be also alternative chosen for that. So it's not that we are so strict about it. So there are a couple of alternatives where we see that from some other specifications and established standards, maybe equivalent or better idea could come. That's okay. The fourth one, security updates. That's, I think, very interesting one. There must be a secure update mechanism. Also, replacing the cards in the field is a security update mechanism. And we can talk about devices that are literally not online, about devices that are occasionally online or permanently online. The only difference that we can make there is whether the automatic security updates are applicable or not. But there is no exception from performing security updates. Vulnerabilities shall be addressed. You also see here a rather long list of requirements here. We are talking about EUCC patch management. This is giving a very good overview how this can work for devices that we have that are not updatable, like some cards must be closed when they are personalized. Then replacement needs to be documented, of course. Then there is also very important document that we would like to expose now, and this is this ENISA. There is a final version, study how to implement Cyber Resilience Act via EUCC. That's precisely what we talked about. If somebody is doing EUCC, then there are probable gaps to be covered. In this document, you will also find an annex where there are additional propositions that are extending the common criteria, because common criteria was not written for the CRA, and EUCC is also trying to compensate for that. So from this document, we are seeing propositions that are written in a precise common criteria language, and we are referencing them also from this document. So you see this one, ALFC FLR4. That's not something what you would find in a common criteria. You would find it in the annex to this document here. By the way, this document is also a rather good reading, and there is also a good webinar. So I think that this is worth of a time investment. Okay, then access control to the product with digital elements, meaning to the application on the secure element. It must be under control and logical. I mean, the requirement is clear there, but it's not trivial how to implement it. It's also not trivial how to document it, to validate the robustness, to have policies, to understand how the sessions during the access controls are managed, also how the roles are concepted in it. So there's a quite extensive list of the requirements that need to be respected here. And you see here that it's mandatory. Now, to the exceptions that we have here, of course, access control is relying in some cases on a timing source. Notifications might not be available because the requirement itself is also requiring what you don't see here in that precision, what will come in a standard. The attempts of the access control also needs to be logged and documented. And sometimes how can you document something if you don't have time of the access? Well, it is sufficient to have the sequence of the events. So at least that can be then documented. Also, there are alternatives to some of the requirements coming from the common criteria. Once again, and the same principle, if equal, equivalent, or better security functionality can be guaranteed by these alternatives, that's okay. The next one, confidentiality. Here we, of course, talk about state-of-the-art cryptographic mechanisms that are protecting data from disclosure. The requirements here are also quite clear. We are also having here the FTP TRP1 from the implementation. And same principle, mandatory, some of the alternatives to particular requirements can be chosen. Logically, after the confidentiality, usually integrity comes. Same principle here. Checksums, CRCs, ECCs, redundancy replication, whatever one can do for as long as it is clearly documented and it can be validated at the moment of the audit, that's absolutely okay. What's not okay, integrity protection integrated into application. Data minimization, I think that this is one that will cause some of discussion, especially during the public inquiry, because how to ensure that, what does it mean? How to understand what is the data minimization and how to measure that. There is a reflection on that in this ENISA document. This is what it makes it also valuable. I would not want to go into the details of it and how is it enforceable or not. But at the end of the day, it at least needs to be clarified that minimization principles are known, that for anything else that is collected or processed beyond that, for as long probably as it is applicable for the use case, and if this can be justified, there will be possibility to comply with the standard itself. However, if it's noticed that then beyond any measure, data is processed and evaluated or manipulated or collected in any way, of course, common sense is saying that this should not be a practice that is meaningful. Interesting one, the ninth, the basic functionality available despite of an incident. That's something that is actually saying, especially if you have a critical infrastructure or any type of the installation where you depend on a secure element or any other thing. Sometimes the system they have to continue to operate, even if the incident is in progress or incident has passed. But here, if we have some of the systems, the incident itself may trigger the mechanisms in the secure element that are not maybe even related to application, that's also must be said, that can temporarily or permanently stop certain functions. If we take a look at the chips that are in the smart cards, there are many sensors in them, as some of us would know it. And if these sensors are overstretched, well, there is a bridge burned and the card has to be replaced. So these exceptions can be handled, they are meaningful, but they cannot apply for everything. So we are talking here again about the relation to this security profiling and severity levels, which shall be respected. Then, minimizing the negative impact around the product or product with digital elements. How to design the application where the disruptions to other devices or networks can be controlled. Well, asset management, secure channels, sandboxing, communication controls, fault detections, redundancy, and many practices that many of the secure firmware developers know, almost all about it, should be practiced. Here, of course, it's mandatory, and there are only alternatives to the particular common criteria requirements that can be proposed, again, by the same principle, equivalent provisioning of the security response, or even better, can be respected. Limiting attack surface, a good practice for the security design. I think, needless to say it, it's just underlined by the essential security requirements. Additionally, here we precisely can talk again about the concept of updating the cards in the field, which would evidently expand the attack surface. So if it's justifiable, okay, we could probably go into this direction as well, but in most of the times common sense is saying just like don't do it. Still, the limiting attack surface, please, let's also note that applications on the secure elements are not related only to the cards. There are many other devices that we need to respect. And here we definitely need to work on the protecting of the external interfaces, minimizing the functionalities, having the secure protocols, and all of the measures that can contribute to limit the attack surface. Okay, then the next one, how to mitigate the incidents. There is provisioning also by common criteria known already for many times, but the separations, secure coding, sandboxing, what we also mentioned in the one of the architectures before, there are many ways how to restrict the attacker's ability to compromise the product or the system around the product. Again, mandatory requirement. Recording and monitoring. Here, recording and monitoring on the card, this is where we need to work maybe a little bit more. Might really depend on the computational capabilities and memory availability on some of the systems. Some of the applications on secure elements are rather limited with that. But there should be some form of the security auditing enabled, incident detection, and some forensic analysis. Please, here we had some discussions here that usually indicated that these cards that are not in the scope of this standard are never going to have these capabilities, which is, again, a good moment to think about how to distinguish them. Where is it important? What is the severity in the use case? And then to choose a particular card or application on a secure element or the architecture around it that would help with that or not. Okay, so here, exceptions to the recording and monitoring, you see that they can be considered. For example, it can happen that computational capabilities of the application of the secure element or the entire secure element are simply not sufficient. This really can depend on the platform. And again, we would violate here compliance with the essential and basic functionalities and minimizing the service disruption. So this is what I mentioned. Some of these might be interconnected. And there are also exceptions from the opt-out mechanisms that may be tolerated. I think that it is well documented here. Yes, and some of the applications are simply permanently prevented to access some of the data for the security reasons. Okay, and the last one here, deletion of data and settings by the end user. So this requirement is actually saying that users should be able to delete the data, and that also a transfer of the data should be enabled. And again, trivial and impossible to imagine use cases, for example, to delete data from electronic passport or to transfer them to another electronic passport. However, we should not be close-minded on these things. The question is not about whether end user can do that or should not that. The question would be maybe not for electronic passport, but let's think a little bit about mobile applications. The question is more evolving around whether this can be enabled for the end user or by the end user, and how can be this done securely in compliance with all of the other requirements. So while in some known products, some of these requirements on the product may sound as not really applicable, please understand that we have to write a requirement for any type of the application in any use case for any secure element, and that we are definitely trying to address the exceptions as well. Sometimes, for example, here, the end users do not own the application on the secure element. Governmental ID cards are typically continuing to be under the ownership of the government. And then access to applications, functionality might be permanently prevented for precisely security reasons. And some of the applications may even require the destruction of the secure element. Typically, at least in some countries, it is advised to the end user to cut through the chip when card is invalid, payment cards, for example. Okay, with this, we have concluded the overview of the chapter related to the product requirements. I hope that questions are recorded. We will just go now through the vulnerability handling, which is a shorter part of the requirements, and we will look through them. And then I think soon after we can conclude the deep dive context and dive even deeper thanks to the questions that will be connected. Let's start with the vulnerability handling. The first one, I think that if I say only SBOM, everybody will know what is meant about it. And yes, talking about the SBOMs is always a good discussion, sometimes a little bit heated discussion, but I think that it was predictable that the regulation itself and the standards themselves will demand the creation of the SBOM, and all of the application-related software and components within the application around the application should be addressed. And here we also have the additional requirement coming from the CRA implementation document from the annex there, the ALC SBM 1.1 is talking about it. There is also a GL library about the security architecture, where the architecture could also be used to address that. And why is SBOM important? I think that it is not about pleasing the regulation itself. A clear architecture, especially from the security perspective, is the backbone of what security update should also consider, which is detanglement of the functional requirements updates and security requirements updates. When SBOM is really clear about it, and if the architecture is good, then this is the cheapest way how to handle this and many other requirements here. Addressing vulnerabilities. Needless to say, they need to be addressed, of course. While it sounds trivial, it's not trivial how they should be addressed. So there is a systematic flow remediation that is mandated by the standard itself. And there are also additional requirements from the already mentioned the document, the ALS FLR 4. The bigger question is, where are the automated updates not feasible? That's not so clear always, but what is clear that also there, if it's not feasible to update the firmware or the software or the security functionality that is related to the application on the secure element, then if there is no automation, then question is whether the entire context with secure element, or at least only the secure element, should be replaced. Regular security testing, you have seen in the timeline, in the lifecycle management suggestion, that constant monitoring, addressing vulnerabilities is important. Therefore, regular security testing is mandatory. Now, the other way around how it may also work is that wait and see is practiced, and then when something happens, when it is discovered in the market, then addressing might be meaningful. Well, this is also one way how security updates can be enforced, but what is more important is that even if this happens, it is addressed, it is tested, it is verified, it is validated, and it goes forward in the compliant way. Publishing fixed vulnerabilities. Yes, public disclosure should occur as soon as the vulnerability is available. Now, here we also need to be clear that in some particular cases, exposing vulnerabilities might worsen the situation. And we also need to be careful about in which environment is secure element operating. So in alignment with manufacturers of the chips and operating systems, smart cards or similar devices, these disclosures may be delayed, but not indefinitely. If a delay needs to be considered, then also it needs to be, it needs to come, so justification and a request for the delay must also come with a new disclosure date. Then implementing and practicing vulnerability disclosures, mandatory. There needs to be a coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy, and many of the manufacturers of the applications and devices do already have this implemented. But also supporting the third-party reporting. Now, in some cases, well, probably in many cases related to this product with digital elements, so with the application on a secure element, the third-party reporting on security events might be essential for their compliance. Therefore, wherever the secure element application is part of the composition of the wire composition, there must be insurance that whoever is bringing the product, the composed product to the market, is getting support from the application manufacturer. Also, secure distribution of the updates, needless to say, it needs to be done with a certain mechanism, and there is also a common criteria provisioning for that. Typically, guidance to integrators or whoever is doing this application needs to be provided, and in many of the cases we know that this is already done. The last one, dissemination of the updates, the distribution of the security updates needs to be done free of charge. The free of charge obligation. This needs to be further refined, of course, but the way how we understand it at the moment is that free of charge does not mean that the cost of the entire system around it is free of charge. So we need to be a little bit careful about it because, look, you at least need to pay for the ISP fee, and there must be something that is transporting the security update to it. But specifically and very narrowly, what this requirement is saying is that security update itself needs to be available promptly and free of charge. Okay, with that being said, there are also additional requirements, and that's just one slide. We have, and we are working on additional requirements on the remote data processing solutions. So regardless of how secure element is communicating, which interface is used, contact, contactless, wireless, whatever, whether it is directly connected or indirectly to on-premise or cloud service, all of these are really requirements on the remote data processing solutions. Then the second thing, requirements on product composition, already mentioned, some of them are addressed, but it is also important to understand what is the software composition when we have just a platform end application, or where the entire secure element is embedded into another product. And the third set of the requirements that we will be working on are the requirements on application manufacturer environment setting, meaning there must be a security maturity policy implemented around the development of the application for the secure element. There must be also a development flow and operational flow. So I think it is recognizable that some degree of the DevOps context needs to be implemented here, or maybe even DevSecOps. And yes, so this will be also required by the standard. However, the standard itself cannot be prescriptive about do it this way or that way. That's, I think, inappropriate. But what standard must address is that it has to be there. Okay, so with that being said, I'm stopping the sharing for the moment. And I hope that we already have questions. Oh, quite a few. Okay, so this was it. So this was deep dive. We for now have 10 questions. Some of them are a little bit longer than the others. Would it be also okay? So the authors of the questions are, of course, welcome also to join the session and to speak up. I think else if there is a limitation of possibility so that colleagues and people here are muted, there's no need for that. Let us then try to answer these questions one by one. And I think that the floor is open also for the discussion and for even more questions. So Vasileios is asking, is the use of the hardware-based secure storage such a trusted platform module mandatory for protecting encryption and decryption keys, or is a software-based solution sufficient to meet the essential security requirements? Vasileios, I cannot answer this question. It's not related to this standard. There are other standards evolving where TPM can be covered. However, I think that I can at least comment on one principle. The Cyber Resilience Act is not demanding particular functionality. It is demanding practices around these functionalities. So I think that protecting encryption and decryption of the keys, well, this depends on the use case. So maybe if you would want to comment live, if you want to speak up about it, Vasileios, are you still in a call? Yes, you are.
But he's indeed muted. So if he wants to speak, you can raise your hand so we know you are still there and available for talking.
Hi, Vasileios.
Hello.
Please, you are here, you're unable to talk, and you have two questions. So can you explain a little bit the context about it? It's really use case specific how this should be handled.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for the session first. And I'm just here. It's the first time I just wanted to use this opportunity to ask some questions because I did a little bit of the research in the CRA, and there are a lot of stuff which is not so clear for me. Therefore, this question is comes from, especially because my background is we are coming from the broadcast industry, so video and audio streaming, broadcasting. And we are trying to figure out so where we will categorize first. So because we see us first as in default products, but then we have also a couple of products where are creating some custom OS, and then we will see us as an important product class 1. And therefore, all these questions are now coming on. So, for example, if we need to encrypt, and I guess we need to encrypt the critical data like configuration, like control data, which needs to be encrypted by in transit. So how is it with, for example, how then to store those keys? Because you need somehow, if you want to do encryption, you need somehow also to store your keys in a secure way so that they are not compromised or that nobody can replace them, for example, and do an airdrop on your transport.
Okay, thank you for explaining more. Definitely, it feels like either a default product category if it's just a wide broadcast of the content, or important class 1 products. For example, if you would have, I don't know, access control products and, surveillance cameras and so on. In there, whoever is architecting the product would need to look into another standard that is evolving. There are a couple of standards in that category, and they will bring more clarity. But generally, I would say it is use case related, and same like what we have with the smart cards. It's not equal if you are doing an application in a critical infrastructure or if you are just using the secure elements, or in many cases you would not even need to use secure elements if you just need to access the locker in the gym. Okay, so please, I would advise to stay attentive. Other deep dive talks will come, and I would suggest to look to those ones that are in the category 1.
Okay, many thanks.
Okay, you also have the second question. What is the authoritative source for agreed cryptographic algorithms? This is the ECCG under the ENISA and European Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Then we have Andrea Zanuso. I hope that I'm spelling this right. Good afternoon. I work for a company that produces industrial floor cleaning machines, and one of them is a self-driving robot. Andrea, this is cool application already, I can say. At the moment, all data collected by the sensors are elaborated locally on the machine computer, but in the future, there should be a possibility to exploit a cloud-based elaboration method for bigger maps. The data inside the machine are encrypted and only the manufacturer can access them. There are currently no authentication methods on this platform. Given the premises, can this kind of machine be considered an SE? If not, be considered an SE? And if not, what are the key steps to make it CRA compliance? Andrea, a little bit longer question. This is also not directly related to secure elements unless you want to embed them into this robot. However, wait a second, Andrea, are you still with us online? I'm just trying to...
Yes. Yes.
Okay, hi. Okay,
Yeah,
look.
good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this a lot of information about the CRA. It is helping us so much to clear some fog around all these documentation and needed documentation, compliance, and so on. So we are focusing on collecting so much information, and this meeting, this kind of meeting is really helpful.
Thank you, Andrea. And it is not the only one. More of such meetings and deep dives will come over the next weeks. This particular question, I also cannot address it from the perspective of the secure element because I simply cannot know whether it makes sense to embed it or not. It's really use case dependent. Here as well, I would suggest to look into either default categories or class 1. Where also presumption of conformity can be done directly by the manufacturers of the products with digital elements. However, in your question, where you write, there are currently no authentication methods on this platform. If authentication is related to the accessibility of the data and assets on this platform, then it has to be implemented. This is the requirement by the Cyber Resilience Act, no matter which product category we talk about. So this is as much as I can answer. The second one, can this kind of machine be considered an SE? No. Secure elements are really little chips. This is not an entire machine.
Okay, this is now it is clear for us because we have this really big machine, let's say, which of course inside has a navigation computer. All the data are stored inside this computer, and we were wondering if this computer could have been considered as an SE or not, because
no,
right
definitely
now,
not. Yeah.
Right now, the user of the machine has no way to access the data inside the navigation computer. Only a specialist, a technician, the manufacturer. So there is no way that the data can be accessed by error. So we did not implement an authentication method so far. But we will do it if it is necessary to obtain the CRA compliance, of course.
Well, also the person that is, so we are talking also about role-based access control and logical access control models. Also, the person that is accessing this data, so the specialized technician, will have to have particular rights. The roles needs to be clearly described. The access to the assets needs to be limited depending on a use case.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. And once again, also other, maybe even more appropriate deep dives will happen. Then the next question is by a colleague from another technical committee. Hi, Uwe. Hi, Ivan. Thank you for a good overview. Thank you for thanking me. As we shared the smart cards and similar devices, the number 41, as critical product needs to go to third-party assessment, do you foresee any other option for assessment within the hand of the TC224 or for number 41? No, I don't think that this is possible. Maybe some things could happen, but in the current discussions within ETSI and Senelec, and also in discussions with EU Commission representatives, there must be a third-party assessment for anything what is in a critical category. Uwe, would you also like to comment more on that?
Oh, Uwe left already. There's another
Okay.
Uwe still in the list, but it's not this person. No.
Okay. So I guess the other Uwe is Uwe Schnabel, who is also,
Yes.
I would expect also some questions. Good. So then we have again Vasileos. I think Vasileos, we have covered that. Is it so?
So yes, it's a bit confusing for me because on couple of in parts in CRA, you have the statement, okay, no vulnerabilities at all, and then if you go to the reference, then the statement is no exploitable vulnerabilities. So because that's a big difference for me. So what is exactly mean is that because you have also in you could have also in your product, for example, and a library which has a low risk, but for example, the maintainer is not there anymore. For example, like an edge case. What you do in such kind of situation if we need to be vulnerability free at all? So also no risk vulnerabilities, no lower risks.
Well, okay. So I think that it's not imaginable to be vulnerability free. The only question is how conscious are we about vulnerabilities and which of them are exploitable or not. The regulation itself is clear about it. Product must be secure at the moment of the placement in the market. There must be a secure configuration, and all of the vulnerabilities that would be exploitable at that moment should not be present in it. And there also must be a very secure configuration that simply needs to work. And the other context, there is also a procedure how to identify exploitable vulnerabilities and how to manage them. And you basically have two ways. Either you get alerted information that something is not up to date anymore, or you simply explore through your own testing what could become exploitable, and then you remove them. So while there is a bigger focus on what is exploitable vulnerability through the constant security updates, any vulnerability should be removed. Okay, but look, when you take a look at vulnerability itself, you might learn about it and maybe it is not even known that it exists. That's actually the diligence that you need to do through your own processes and constantly evaluate your product and constantly provide security updates. The other way is what you can get from the market, where you can actually understand what is exploitable, what is critical, what is coming from where. This also needs to be addressed. So the correct answer is both, but the only question is how conscious are you about vulnerabilities that are not exploitable, and you need to definitely address the ones that are reported, that are visible, that where it is known that it is exploitable. And how it is known, this is also explained in regulation to an extent that is understandable.
Okay, many thanks.
Okay. Andreas Resch, what is the difference between the application of Article 8.1 and Article 27.9 with respect to the use an EU cybersecurity certificate? Andreas, you are in the call. Please help me a little bit. Don't think just because I'm talking about Cyber Resilience Act that I know everything by heart. So please help us and give us a little bit more details if it's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. You said and mentioned in one slide that you're right that the conformity or the demonstration with the essential requirements can done in the different ways. And for critical products, if you look into the Article 32, there stated that, of course, it can be done via an European cybersecurity certificate scheme in accordance with Article 8. Paragraph 1, but you referred to the article of the presumption of conformity, which is 27, and there in paragraph 9, there are also mentioned cybersecurity certificates. Mainly, I think the way is that this Article 27 is referred from the important product class 2, which is the fallback option for the critical category products. I was just wondering why you initially referred to the Article 27, which was originally tied to the important product class 2, and not referring to the Article 8, paragraph 1, so which is like the first way of conformity demonstration for critical products.
Okay, so the presumption of conformity context, and actually I will even share the. Can I share it still? I can. Let's share this one. So let's go together through this. So the context of the Article 27 is actually helping us to understand how we could actually get to the presumption of conformity. I think that one little question or sub-question from your statement, Andreas, is something that I would need to discuss in a more detail. You have mentioned that there would be a fallback from critical products to class 2.
Right.
At the moment,
yes.
I'm not aware that there would be a fallback. These are really two different categories. Okay, please.
No. I mean, if you had to article. Okay, we do not have to discuss this in full detail, but we discussed this question here sometimes, which is more applicable for critical products. Will it be Article 8 or Article 27? I think the main difference is Article 27 is presumption of conformity, and Article 8 is demonstration of conformity.
Exactly.
So if you do not, I mean, you want this can be a lengthy discussion, so we can discuss it maybe later if there's audience. But I think, have you thought about this different types of conformity and made a
yes, absolutely,
made a choice for opting for 27?
Both of them are included. Look, for the critical context is definitely Article 8. But if you go with the EUCC evaluation and certification, at the end of the process, and you have covered the gaps towards the harmonized standard, then you can claim presumption of conformity as well. So both are included in this standard. The only thing what you cannot do, because it is a critical component, and that's not only for secure elements, it's also for smart meters and secure boxes like HSM and so on. You cannot evaluate product by yourself, which is possible in some other categories. So that's because they're critical, so there should be a third party looking into that.
Yeah, for disclaimer, I'm from the WG6, which we are working on the smart meters standard.
Okay, good.
That's the question. We're just looking what other groups are doing.
Okay, excellent. Then, Andreas, then you're in the WG6. Please contact me anytime. I would love to have even deeper dive with you on that. But for now, I think that for this audience, it is okay to say that presumption of conformity is possible only in the scope of the EUCC security evaluation and certification. Other than that, demonstration of conformity by the third party in the front of the third party has to be performed in order to obtain the compliance document. Then, Vasileos, how to handle public-facing audio-video streams broadcasts? Do they require encryption in transit? Vasileos, this is again a functional question, not really related to secure elements. I apologize. We can have also separate discussion on that, but that's a completely functional question that I would not be able to answer because it is out of the scope of this secure element context. Then Arjit Kumar Bose, for air-gapped devices, non-internet facing applications, how automated secure updates can work? Arjit, I also cannot answer this. I'm not specialist on this, and this is again a functional context. It's difficult to say, and it is also not related to the product with digital element that we are talking about here. Your second question is CRA also or will mandate maintaining cryptographic bill of materials, CBOM, SBOM, and ABOM? So I think that it is clear in the first requirement for all of the products, the SBOMs are definitely mandated. But here again, this is also a question that is rather generic. The generic answer is yes, but you probably should look into details within the standard that is more applicable for your product. Then we have a question by Fedora Palmisano. Hi, Fedora. In the CRA, SE is classified as a critical product. Annex 4, how to demonstrate conformity. Critical products require a certification following an European certificate. Okay, good. Yes, BSITR is not really referenced yet in that context. In the presentation, slide 10, the assessment according to this standard is the first path to CRA compliant. Yes. Would you clarify what seems to be to me a contradiction? Fedora, I would appreciate if you would speak up and help me to understand where you see a contradiction.
Hi, Ivan. Glad to see you. Thank you very much for this useful
Buongiorno,
presentation. Buongiorno. So, as you will know, I'm trying to keep updating with the CRA topic, and yeah, it seems that I did a confusion with this basic concept because if how to demonstrate a conformity is a certification under the EUCC mandatory for a critical product? This is my question because I was I think that
Okay.
it was in this way.
No, no, it is not mandated. So Fedora, allow me just to explain this because it is simple, but because two things are possible, they collide, and especially people who have deep experience. And Fedora, I know you as one of the marvelous people having this deep experience. In a moment we see common criteria, we are immediately reacting, okay, now I have to go through the entire pain. No, it's not like that. So first and foremost, here is the Article 27, good that I have it open, that is actually regulating what the presumption of conformity can be. Now, let us go back to the presentation, to the moment, just a second, that I... Okay, here we go. Okay, yeah. So look, the compliance to Cyber Resilience Act does not mandate any type of the security evaluation and certification, including EUCC. What does this mean? If you just want to obtain Cyber Resilience Act compliance for a product with digital element called secure element, you can take this standard and work it out. You have seen the requirements and so on.
Yeah.
And go to the third party.
The notified body, you mean?
Exactly. And then you can work out on the assessment. They have to look into that. They
Yes.
have to, so it's not like common criteria evaluation, but they have to look through all of these details, probably test a couple of them. And then you can get, if everything is fine, you will get the CRA compliance assessment report. Okay?
Okay.
That's not related to any EUCC story. So you don't have to do evaluation or certification. However, the other way around. So if you want to, or you plan to go into the EUCC story, okay, so you want to perform the certification. For many manufacturers, there might be a reason because they might address some use cases where they need to have the certificate that their product is either substantial or high. You don't get substantial or high certificate by doing the CRA. You can do this only, and you can get this only via EUCC. But then if people are already doing EUCC, it makes sense that they are enabled to do the presumption of conformity after this process is accomplished. So this is confusion. You just want to do the CRA, you go either with a standard or you find your own way, doesn't matter. But if you say, I want to actually go with a EUCC level substantial or level high, then you can build the gap into the security target. Okay. And then you automatically, after getting, I don't know, substantial or high, you also automatically can claim the presumption of conformity.
Okay.
I hope that I have not confused you even more with that.
No.
Okay.
I
So
was
think
assured that the certification was mandatory for critical products.
You can get CRA. Look, I think logically many of the systems, many of the customers will require the certification as well. I mean, it's difficult to, but for the Cyber Resilience Act compliance, this is not mandatory. I can really underline this here. If you just want to have CRA compliant, you don't have to do it. But you know what? It's not like the gap is big, depending on the product. So
yeah,
it's really on the manufacturers to see what is the value in the certification and compliance or only compliance.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully answered. What do we have next? Arjit. In ESC 62443, we have system interconnected devices. The CRA applies to individual products within the systems or other system. Yes, CRA applies to all of the products with digital elements placed on the European market. Different components, individual products inside the system can have different product life cycles, such as their cybersecurity lifecycle support. In this case, how can we address the security posture of the entire system in a sustainable way? The system level mitigation accepts a remediation is the only accepted solution in CRA. Arijit, unfortunately, this is also a question that would require deeper analysis of the particular use case, and the question is asking about functionality, how to do something. The standard is explaining what to do and what is required. The how is really with manufacturers. Also, I feel that this standard that I was just explaining is not really related to your use case because it doesn't seem that you have secure elements in it. You know, these little chips that are in the smartphones or smart cards and so on. Arijit, would you like to, as you have many questions, would you like to speak up and explain us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, hi Ivan.
Please.
Thanks for your nice presentation. So, I come from an electrical power system industry. And of course, you are right that we don't have much of the smart card type of devices, right? But for example, this standard that you see here in electrical power systems, typically the devices have very longer lifetime, like 20 years,
Yes.
right? And of course, I mean, you can imagine these devices in generic form. They have a processor, they have an operating system. It could be bare metal, and there is some user level apps running on it, right? So it senses and it processes OT specific, like physical conditions, like voltage, current. Now, the thing is that, as you know, that different operating systems, it can have different life cycle. For example, yes, there could be a new version of operating system, but we cannot directly patch it up in this OT environment because the device's uptime is extremely important, the availability of the electrical power sector. So if moment you upgrade an operating system, it will go in a downtime mode, right?
Okay.
So
yeah,
that's the use case, basically.
I understand it. I have 2 comments. I will allow myself second comment. So the first comment is I believe that you should look into the upcoming webinar and also standard that is evolving around smart metering, which is extremely relevant for the use case that you have mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first one. And the second one, I will allow myself, even if I'm not coming from a deeper expertise level on that, but I do think that updating of the critical systems with the redundant system and then switching on either gradually or in the parallel running mode, that this is not a novelty. There are many systems out there that already have mechanisms. It's just that they require more processing power, sometimes even a secondary machine, depending on how the system works out. So, and what you have mentioned is precisely what is addressed with some of the product-related requirements. What you have seen there, it's generically applicable for all of the products, that even when you have an incident, especially in the use case that you have described, functionality must be guaranteed. So I think that architecting these systems, we would all want to see them operating, even if there is a precarious situation out there. However, Arijit, this is really something that is closer to another standard.
Yep.
So smart metering, keep it as a note.
Yep.
I know that colleagues are precisely running into direction that will answer your questions there. Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you also for participating. Well, it looks like we have answered all of the questions at least. Any other question for now?
Just one question from my side, Ivan, that I posted, that the post-quantum cryptography will.
Oh, yes. Yes, addressed. Please take a look into maybe not in the extent that would not be debatable, just to give it like that. So please take a look into the ACM, so the agreed cryptography methodologies. There is, of course, always the work going into that direction, and there is always a question which algorithms are recommendable now at the moment. Then also, what is the threat from the post-quantum cryptography? So there is a wide discussion that is definitely open and ongoing. Nevertheless, Europe is going towards one set of the recommendations within this ACM, and either this or even higher rigor shall apply.
Okay.
Good. So if there are no more questions, I would simply appreciate if we can close the session for now. As said, the session will be open for feedback. there is also a public inquiry coming, where we will definitely appreciate very deep analysis and very deep comments on a standard that is coming. For now, I think that this would be all. I will stop sharing. And I think that I can leave the closing word to Els or Lucia.
I have myself nothing special to add, but I would like to launch a feedback poll, just a short poll with 3 questions that is asking the attendees to give their feedback on the webinar, and we use the answers received to improve our webinars in the future. So if you can all do that, that would be very helpful. I would like to give the floor to Lucia, my colleague, who is hopefully still on the other side of the line. Lucia.
Thank you, Els. Thank you, Ivan, and everyone for joining us today for this deep dive session. I would like to thank you for your input, for your feedback, questions, and let you know that we are launching similar events for other standards that are responding to the CRA mandate. And for these, in case you don't know it, we have a website available, which I'm pasting here in the chat, where you can see all of the work for the CRA in case you have any interest in other work as well. And regarding the materials and everything that we generated from today's deep dive session, the slides that Ivan and his team kindly prepared, the recording, and the link to which you can further give us feedback. We will send you all of this information. We will send to all of the attendees a notification that the information became available, and otherwise you can find it at the website where you register for this event. I think those were my last words. And again, one big thank you to you, Ivan and Els, for your work and support for this webinar, for this deep dive session.
No problem. Thank you, Lucia. Well, from my side, this would be all. Looking forward to see the feedback from the webinar then later.
Yes, I will share that with both of you later. And there was also a question on the presentation and the recording. So it will not possibly, normally not be available today, but for sure tomorrow. And all the attendees will receive an email notification from my side if it is available. So you should, you cannot miss it, I would say. So thanks a lot, Ivan. Thanks a lot, Lucia. Thanks a lot to everybody who joined this afternoon. And see you hopefully next time. Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye.